That's kind of. Is there an agenda? It's not. Yes. Yeah.
You open it all by yourself.
Yeah.
Of them.
Not of me, please. Not of Josh.
See that right out.
I don't feel like I need to be in it either. Thank you.
Oh. That's like the outreach, that's how we used to do it. But there's so many else, so we don't have.
I know. What's up with that? Oh, good. Cody came to my rescue.
Well,
Hi.
We weren't chatting, so we-
No, no. That's
do you
nope.
have the script?
Yeah. As well as some other present comments, actually all the comments.
Yeah,
Okay,
we got
cool.
some new ones.
There are some, we don't know this business anymore. Yeah, that'd be great. I will.
Yeah, I didn't turn it on. It's not. So.
It's me.
Or yeah.
Got it. Do you have a? I'll just. Yeah, you got one? Thanks. Hey, buddy. All right, I'll go get one. Okay.
Good.
Hey there.
Hey, buddy.
All the new comments are on that, just so you know.
Yeah, I saw them. I looked at them. I fancy.
Yeah, because we already looked at it. I was like,
Oh.
Josh could see it. I go, no, I haven't been at the computer all day. You're fancy.
Yeah. All right, it's 5:30. We have a quorum, so we will get started. Planning Commission meeting, August 15th, 2024, 5:30 PM. Paula, may we please have the roll call?
Here.
Here. Here.
I can't hear. I can't hear her saying the names.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Me now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Want me to start over?
As long as you didn't skip my name, you're good.
No, I didn't. Well, Maria is absent. Mark Popoff,
Here.
Nick Portella.
Here.
Excellent. Thank you. The Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry, I didn't hear my name, but I'm here as well.
Oh,
Okay, would you mind turning your camera on, please, Maria?
Sure.
Next is the approval of the agenda. If all commissioners have had an opportunity to review the agenda, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda with a second?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
The motion to approve the agenda and a second has happened. All in favor of approving the agenda, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Approval of the minutes.
I didn't see Maria.
Approval of the minutes from the June 6th meeting, 2024. If all commissioners have had an opportunity to review those minutes, may I please have a motion to approve those minutes with a second?
Motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second.
Thank you. The approval of the minutes has been, or the minutes from the June 6th meeting have been a motion to be approved with a second. All in favor of approving the minutes from the June 6th meeting, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
All right, unanimous as well. Next part of the meeting is the portion for public comment. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject that does not later appear on the agenda. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. So if anyone, lots of people in the audience, if you have things to say about Basalt Commons and the parking or anything of the appeal, that would not be the time to do it now. This is for other stuff. Okay. Moving on then to the quasi judicial public hearing. Bear with me, I have to read from a script here about just kind of the process that we're going to be working with. We'll dive right into it. Now is the time specified with commission to conduct a quasi judicial public hearing to consider the following matter. Appeal application number 037-24 and appeal of administrative approval of SPR 544-24. Approval of an application submitted by Chris Hodney, Hacker Architects, to construct a 116 for-rent apartments over plus or minus 9,500 square feet of retail space, resident amenities and building services in a plus or minus 96,000 gross square foot, 5-story mixed-use building. This hearing requires the commission to make its decision based exclusively on the applicable criteria, the evidence in the record, and specific findings. The substantive criteria upon which the commission will base its decision in this matter are found in the staff report. Anyone who wishes to testify must be recognized by me, the chair, before testifying. When I recognize you, please proceed to the microphone and state your name and mailing address for the record. The hearing is also required to be recorded. Generally, the public hearing procedure will go as follows. Prior to the public hearing, we will begin with the staff report and any questions the commission may have for the staff. After the staff report, we will hear from the applicant. After the applicant, we will hear from the appellant. Next, I will ask for testimony from any proponents of the appeal, that is those in favor of the appeal and who think the application should be denied. Then I will ask for testimony from the opponents of the appeal, those against the appeal and who think the application should be approved. Finally, I will ask for testimony from anyone else who wishes to offer relevant testimony or ask relevant questions. Finally, the applicant will have an opportunity for final rebuttal. That's the applicant, not the appellant. To expedite the hearing, commissioners may ask questions of persons as they testify. When this process has been concluded, I will close public testimony and the commission will deliberate towards a decision. During the hearing, some important standards apply. First, if you testify, please address your testimony to the applicable substantive criteria or other criteria which the person believes applies to the decision to the comprehensive plan or the Dalles Municipal Code Title 10. Second, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to allow the commissioners and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue prohibits an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Third, failure to participate in this public hearing, either orally or in writing, precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. Fourth, prior to concluding the hearing, anyone may ask that the record be held open for additional evidence or arguments. If such a request is made, the commission will either A, continue the hearing to a time and date at least 7 days in the future, or B, hold the record open for at least 7 days. Finally, the commission's final decision must include findings of fact demonstrating the applicable standards have been met. These are the rules. Are there any questions? Sorry, one more rule. When we get into public testimony, which we have, there's a lot of people here, and which is great. We will be limiting the public testimony to 5 minutes. If you have already submitted written testimony, that's great. If you'd like to elaborate briefly on the written testimony that you've already had, that's great. But if you're just going to come up and read the written testimony that you have already submitted, that's not the best use of time. And we want to just be considerate of that. Do any members of the commission need to declare any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
No.
Okay. The public hearing is now open. May we please have the staff report?
Good evening, Chair Cornett, Commissioners, Joshua Chandler, Community Development Department. Give me 1 second here as I pull everything up on my screen.
Also, I just wanted to note real quick, I don't know if John was here when we were taking roll, and I just want to make sure that he gets
He
on there.
wasn't, but I added him.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So the item of discussion tonight is appeal number 37-24. The appellant is Bob Wickwire. The site address is 523 East 3rd Street. Site zoning district is the Central Business Commercial, or the CBC zone. The zoning sub-district is CBC2. So the issue at hand is the appeal of the administrative approval of site plan review 544-24, which was approved on July 12th, 2024, for the approval to construct 116 for-rent apartments over 9,500 square feet of retail space, resident amenities, building services, and about a 96,000 square foot gross square foot 5-story mixed-use building. So as of today, 10 comments were received, and it was really kind of right down the middle, whether or not, proponents or opponents of the project. Those have been provided to you not only in an email, they're also posted to the city's website. If those came in after about 3:30 today, then they're printed for you up front. So project timeline, the site plan review 544-24 was deemed complete May 29th. Notice of decision was provided July 12th. That started a 10-day appeal period of July 22nd. The notice of appeal was submitted on the 22nd in time in the planning department. So this appeal number 37-24, tonight's the Planning Commission, August 15th, 2024, and then the 127-day timeline when this application final determination needs to be made by the city is October 3rd. So subject property, 523 East 3rd Street. This is the former site of Griffith Motors. It's bordered on East 3rd Street, Laughlin, Jefferson Street, and also has an alley in the rear. This is a rendering of the project. So this is, as I mentioned, a 5-story mixed use. I think my numbers are off on the gross square footage with this one, but basically the first floor is retail, resident amenities, building services, and floors 2 through 5, 116 for rent apartments. This is a site plan of basically the ground level. Levels 2 through 5 are included in attachment 1. I didn't provide those in my PowerPoint. So land use review, this project consists of 3 separate actions. So there was a replat, which is consolidating tax parcels into one. That was approved June 18th. The conditional use permit, which we heard in front of the commission on June 6th. It was approved by the commission. It was later appealed and approved by city council on July 22nd. So this is the site plan review that we're discussing this evening. This is for the site and construction of the development. It was approved administratively in our office July 12th. And then a notice of appeal is what we're discussing this evening. This is the review criteria. I'm not going to get into it. There are 104 findings that staff has put together in the staff report. This is a breakdown of all of them. I think everybody is probably going to be focusing on chapter 10.7, but that is findings 68 through 91. Those are the parking standards. Really the topic of discussion this evening. We're not going to go through these findings. We're going to go through the appeal issues. So the appeal issues of Appeal 37-24 describes 6 reasons the Planning Commission should grant the appeal request and reverse the director's previous decision of approval. These include parking, building height, airborne dust nuisance, alley improvements, downtown parking district restrictions, and street sweeping and snow removal requirements. So the first is multi-layered. I'm going to go through everything that was really listed in the notice of appeal and in the staff report. So the parking issues are still unresolved. These are all comments from the appellant. The parking study is not realistic. The city has rules for parking and no way to enforce them. On-site parking, 38 spaces for 116 apartments. The on-site parking is inadequate for a project of this size. Even with the city providing a public parking lot for this project's tenants, there is still inadequate parking for this development, thereby affecting surrounding businesses because parking spaces will be used by those tenants. Now, my apologies for cutting off on the bottom of the screen here, but the waiver for parking, the last is that the waiver for parking should not be granted, and the design of the project should incorporate adequate parking for the tenants on site. So there is a comprehensive, as I mentioned, a comprehensive review of parking included in findings 68 through 91. Findings 68 and 69 discuss allowed vehicle parking reductions, waivers, and exemptions pursuant to the Dalles Municipal Code 10-7-2040. 2 of those we'll discuss in more detail. These 2, D and F of that section. So the first is D. This is an off-street parking waiver. It's a minimum off-street parking spaces required by Article 7.060 may be waived for the following. If a property is located within the boundaries of a legally adopted parking assessment district that provides district-wide parking facilities, this property is not. Or if the property is located within subdistrict CBC2 in the CBC2 district. As I mentioned previously, this property is located in CBC2. Being located in CBC2, the development is eligible for off-street parking, an off-street parking waiver at the developer's request. The applicant proposed to apply the parking waiver, reducing the proposed parking spaces to 35 rather than an outright waiver of all parking. The Dalles Municipal Code 10-220C, discusses different terms that are used in the Dalles Municipal Code. May is used quite significantly. May is a permissive word, allowing the option to exercise a provision. The state law requires only clear and objective standards for housing developments and directs cities to amend their municipal codes to remove permissive or subjective language connected with housing development standards. I think we've discussed enough as a planning commission. We all know what clear and objective standards are. We're all doing our due diligence to make sure we clean that up the best we can in the Dalles Municipal Code. When subjective language exists in a municipal code concerning housing, the right to exercise such subjective standards is reserved to the applicant, not to the appellant or even the city itself. This is consistent with ORS 197A, 400, 3A. And as I mentioned earlier, the developer has requested to exercise this CBC2 waiver. In addition to what was just discussed, this waiver provides flexibility in overall parking requirements and it complements the comprehensive plan goal number 10, housing policy 14, which states that development standards in residential and mixed use areas shall provide for flexibility in site planning and development. Standards shall consider flexibility for lot sizes, setbacks, accessory residential uses on the same lot, parking, alleyways, and other development features. So the next waiver or exemption that we're going to discuss, even in more detail, this is 10.7.2040F. This, I'm paraphrasing it here. It's not directly cited, but this is a section that allows for a modification to the number of required parking spaces. You can increase or decrease the amount of parking spaces with a parking management plan and parking demand assessment prepared by a licensed professional engineer, and it must include a parking demand analysis for the project, a project vicinity, off-street parking supply and demand analysis, and a shared parking analysis. I'm just going to call this the parking study from here on out. So the parking study was for this development was prepared by Rick Williams Consulting. They provided data collection in summer 2023. One day on there was one weekday and one Saturday. There was a 13-hour survey period on those 2 days. These dates aren't even provided to staff because we want to make sure that when these surveys are done, when the firm wants to make sure that nobody knows that the dates that they're going to be out there, so people are acting normal and have those regular parking patterns. So overall, the parking occupancy, staff determined the parking occupancy has significant parking availability both on and off street during peak hours to absorb additional parking demand of new development. On the side here, this is a metric that's used by parking experts, and it's, of course, it's green to red here. On the bottom green, this is 55%. Anything that you'll see in color coded here, 55% means that it's a low demand. Means that parking is readily available. When it's yellow, there's a moderate demand. Orange is an efficient supply. And then 85% or more, you're looking at a constrained parking area. So this is the study area for the parking study. Overall, there are 700, within this area, there's 789 on-street parking stalls. And then 98.6 of them have no limit. There's about 11 of them in this area that are ADA accessible. So those are what we call limited parking. In this area, there's 30 parking lots, 729 spaces, and 112 of those spaces are signed as public parking. So in total, there's a 1,518 parking spaces in this area. So some of the key findings. So one thing that when they go through and they look at the supply and they look at the overall area, they are looking for the overall occupancy of the on-street supply. So the average occupancy on the weekday was 35%, Saturday was 32%, which indicates a low demand. Peak hour was for the weekday was at 1 p.m. where they saw 47% of the stalls occupied, still within that 55% threshold. And Saturday, it was even less, but that was at noon where they saw the peak at 37%. So of empty stalls, overall, there was a high percentage of empty on-street stalls during the weekday and Saturday. So during the weekday peak hour, 1 p.m., there's 421 empty parking stalls within this area. And Saturday, there's 496. So then taking a look at the off-street study area, or off-street parking within the study area, the average occupancy on the weekday, 23%, Saturday, 15%, once again, indicating a low demand for off-street parking system. Peak hour, weekday was at noon, where 33% of the stalls were occupied. On Saturday was 11 a.m. where 19% of the stalls were occupied. So still very low in that 55%, below 55% threshold. And then empty stalls, overall, there was a high percentage of off-street stalls empty during weekday and Saturday. So when they went out there for the 13-hour period of time, they found that at the peak, there was still 489 empty parking stalls. And then on Saturday, sorry I cut it off there, but it was 593 empty parking stalls during that period of time.
Quick question for you, if I may.
Yep.
These parking stalls are off-street parking. So off-street parking in like parking lots, right?
Off-street and parking lots, correct.
Off-street that are parking lots.
Correct.
Right.
Well, it's determined on areas that can be used for parking. So there's areas, there's parking lots around town that may not be striped. There's also street parking isn't striped, as we know in the Dalles. Street parking, to determine that, they basically measure a block frontage and divide it by 23 feet. That's the average that they use for vehicle parking. And then also they use the overall square footage of a parking lot, and they have a number, I think it's around 250 or 300 square feet, gives you a general idea of how they break down parking spaces in an unmarked parking lot.
Okay. And so this is off-street parking stalls. What percentage of those or what percentage of that total is public and private?
I think there's 112 parking spaces that are listed that are signed as public parking. So that is definitely one caveat. Great thing to point out is that we're looking at all the parking lots in the area, and that actually not part of this discussion, but it opens up the idea for shared parking agreements for developers and property owners. But yes, that's a great point. We're not talking about all open parking spaces open to the public for off-street.
Okay. But still a developer could, or excuse me, a private owner could lease out their parking spaces during off hours.
Correct. Yes. And we actually have seen there's a public parking lot just about a block away, right across from the new grocery store, that was just sat as a vacant parking lot for a while. They've actually just started charging like $50 a month to park in their parking lot. So it is not uncommon for that to occur.
Okay.
So this bar graph here, I'm not going to get into all the details, but we also, we talked about just now, we talked about peak hours. We talked about those peak hours because that was when the survey group went around and they looked at the peak usage of parking lots as well as on-street parking. Then there's also this project peak hour, and this is based around the uses. This is a mixed use development. So basically, what was determined is 8 p.m. This is determined as the peak hour for the proposed development. So this is the time when the development should require the most parking. There was at one point, if it's still occurring, this is when a pub was proposed on the ground floor. That's when at 8 o'clock, people are busy at the pub, 116 units, 8 o'clock, most likely the majority of people are home. So that's where that peak hour comes from. Then when you look at this map, this is a heat map that talks about for the project peak area. And as I mentioned, this is the occupancy. I have the triangle there, upside down triangle for you, showing you the color coding once again. You can see there is a lot of green, meaning that at 8 p.m., the peak hour for the development, there is a significant amount of occupancy. And to break those numbers down, on-street parking, I'll just get right to the bottom of it. During the peak period of time, 72 block faces, or 91% of the parkable block faces were considered to be low demand. So less than 55% of those areas were occupied. And off-street parking during that period of time, there was only one surface parking lot that was listed as showing at the efficient occupancy level. So that is basically orange, 70 to 85%. All other off-street facilities show a low demand. So the another point from the appeal was that this parking study is unrealistic, specifically with respect to the distance parkers will walk for purposes of furniture shopping. So that study area that I showed you that was made up of 3 blocks, that was determined to 3 blocks as a reasonable walking distance. And staff would agree that purchasing large bulk items such as furniture is not feasible to any reasonable walking distance. You're not going to carry a couch 2 blocks down the road, but rather it requires the use of nearby loading zones or spaces. And the city already allows 30-minute loading and unloading in all of our alleyways downtown. So this 3 blocks, it's not a city standard for parking distances. We actually do not have a city standard for parking distances. We reach out to, we hire experts for this. However, there is a distance requirement in the Dalles Municipal Code, which is a 1/4 mile, which is the standard for acceptable distances to restroom facilities for mobile food vendors. So not exactly the same, but that is to give you a general idea of something that is in the code. So a 1/4 mile is 1,320 feet. Within the downtown, if you were to walk 3 blocks east to west, you're walking about 1,100 feet. And north to south, it's about 850 feet. And in reaching out to the parking consultant, Rick Williams Consulting, a reasonable distance is really subjective to each city. There's a lot of factors that play into this, but an industry standard is about 750 to 800 feet for an average transient parker and 1,250 feet for district employee parkers. So this zone, but the 800 to 1,250 feet standard is relatively proportionate to the 3 block distance that is used in this parking study. Another comment regarding parking, even with the city providing a public parking lot for the project's tenants, there is still inadequate parking for this development. The city is not providing parking for this development only. The city and the Urban Renewal Agency purchased land adjacent to the subject property for the purpose of redeveloping it into a 23-space free public parking lot. And although current data shows an adequate supply of free on-street parking within the downtown, there's been some recent developments and proposals in our downtown area. This is the city trying to mitigate future impacts on parking and had the opportunity to purchase this property. The other issue mentioned is the city has rules for parking and no way to enforce them. So the city's code enforcement division actually enforces all parking violations on a complaint-driven basis. These violations include abandoned vehicles, storage of motor vehicles on streets, improperly parked vehicles, recreation vehicles, boats and trailers, as well as enforcing the parking restrictions within the city's central business zone, which I will touch on shortly, with 3 citations issued in this last year, actually. The next is a building height. So the proposed building height exceeds the 55-foot height in the CBC zone. For the Dalles Municipal Code 10.5/5060, the maximum building height within the CBC zoning district is 55 feet. However, the building height may be increased to 75 feet with a conditional use permit. This is the conditional use permit that the Planning Commission heard on June 6th. So the applicant proposes a 60-foot building height. This excludes all necessary roof structures, such as a parapet, and it is less than 75 feet. So a CUP for the height increase was submitted on May 6th. The CUP was approved by Planning Commission on June 6th, and the CUP was approved by City Council on July 22nd. So airborne dust nuisances. The concern regards how dust will be mitigated with this development. Similar to all development permits, the following condition of approval is required with this development during construction. The applicant shall prevent the formation of any airborne dust nuisance and shall be responsible for any damage resulting from failure to do so. This is effectively copy and pasted from every development proposal that comes through. We always want to make sure that these types of things are addressed, as well as any erosion and runoff that occurs from a development. So any nuisance concerns that may arise with this development will be addressed on a complaint basis. Also, alley improvements. A comment from the appellant was that the alleyway abutting the property should be a requirement of the development. So during site team, which is our pre-application meeting, multiple right-of-way improvements were discussed as requirements of this development: curbs, gutters, sidewalks, ADA ramps, as well as the resurfacing of the alleyway to the north. The following condition of approval was required initially in the staff report and will be required again. Is to be required completed prior to occupancy, that all required improvements, including all right-of-way improvements and alleyway resurfacing, shall be installed prior to occupancy. The next item of the issue of the appeal touches on the downtown parking district restrictions. So the parking restrictions of building tenants should not only include those on East Third and Laughlin Streets, but it should also include East Second and Jefferson Streets. So finding number 69 in the staff report references that no tenant of the development may park along the East Third and Laughlin Street frontages during the hours of 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. and all violators will be towed at their own expense. So this condition is not development specific. It's an existing requirement of all persons at their place of employment, business, profession, or residence located within the central business zone boundary. This is the central business zone boundary. This was adopted by City Council in 1986. So parking restrictions, if you see the dashed line there, there's existing parking restrictions on numerous streets downtown. The restriction includes East Third and Laughlin Streets, which abut the subject property, and any revisions to this district require City Council approval. None are proposed at this time. So in the initial staff report for site plan review 544-24, staff only referenced frontages abutting the subject property. We did so because it was really just a reminder that anything touching the street frontages had this requirement. However, for clarification, we revised that slightly. The original condition of approval was amended to include district-wide restrictions. So here, instead of just what was included, there was a strike through on here. So this condition doesn't read entirely, but it basically is supposed to say they may not park along public streets in the central business zone boundary. It's incorrect on the PowerPoint, but it is correct in your staff report. So another concern is over street maintenance, specifically street sweeping and snow removal. Staff initially required a condition of approval that restricted parking along East Third Street weekly for street sweeping purposes. This was something mentioned in our site team meeting initially with the developer. But after further review, staff determined that no other street frontage within the downtown area has restricted parking for ongoing street sweeping, nor is such a requirement referenced in the Dalles municipal codes. Therefore, this condition has been removed. The city staff will continue to sweep and remove snow on all downtown streets in the same manner as they are currently practiced. So with that, staff's recommendation is move to adopt resolution number PC 623A-24, which is a resolution denying the appeal and affirming the director's approval of site plan review number 544-24, based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law set forth in the agenda staff report, with all conditions of approval outlined below referencing the conditions of approval within the staff report. There's two other options that I wanted to provide to the commission. If the commission desires to affirm the director's decision based on additional findings, or with different conditions of approval, the condition would be moved to adopt same resolution number, denying the appeal and affirming the director's approval of the site plan review 544-24, yada, 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 as modified by the commission. So that'll be the big thing in the event. I'm happy to pull this up whenever a motion is made. And then the last is, if the planning commission desires to affirm the appeal, move to adopt resolution number PC 623B-24, which is a resolution affirming this appeal and overturning the director's decision. Keep in mind, under this alternative, the planning commission is required to identify the specific criteria supporting its decision against the director's decision. And with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Do the commissioners have any immediate questions regarding the staff report? Nope. Okay. Let's move on to our next step, which is, does the applicant wish to present the project?
Thank you.
Thank you. If you don't mind, if you could please keep the presentation to 10 minutes or less, just because of the multitude of people we have here.
Please be sure to speak into the microphones, everyone.
How's that?
Great.
Okay. My name is Chris Koback. I'm a land use attorney in Bend. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. Mary Hanlon is part of the applicant. She's here, and we have one other speaker who's the construction guy who's going to talk about dust. And we can't keep it within 10 minutes because staff did an excellent job. We don't have a lot more to add, and we gave you fairly detailed written comments. I just want to summarize a little bit what we did for parking. I want to focus on kind of the appeal issues. And we haven't heard all the testimony. So what we can tell you now is we're going to talk about what we know from just the notice of appeal. We'll have to maybe get up later and talk about what we hear because a lot of people are going to speak about it, but we're going to hit what we know the appeal issues are. And parking is the biggest one.
Yes, and the applicant yourselves will have the opportunity to rebuttal once this is all.
So we agree with staff that subsection D, I'm going to narrow it down to save time. Subsection D is one of the paths an applicant has to address parking. And it uses the term may. The minimum parking may be waived. And we agree with staff, that's a permissive term as it's defined, and that gives the applicant the right to do it. But like any mays in life, mays can be qualified. And your code qualifies the term may often. In subparagraph D, there's only one qualification. It's a locational one. It's a clear and objective one. And we agree with staff that clear objective path is given to certain applicants. And that's consistent with the state housing laws 197307. There's another path. If you can't meet that clear and objective, you do have a discretionary path for a reduction. Say you're outside of a zone and you want to reduce parking as an applicant, then there's a less clear and objective. It's subjective. And that term may is used in subparagraph F, but there's more qualifications. You got to do the parking plan. You have to show impacts to adjacent or nearby uses. And there's criteria. It can be denied. So we, the applicants, we elected to take the clear and objective path because we met it. And so what I wanted to say is when we went through the parking plan, that was just a voluntary effort. That didn't create new criteria. When an applicant agrees with staff to say, we will, even though we don't have to give you a parking plan, we want to cooperate and show that there aren't parking issues. This isn't going to create unreasonable demands on parking. It isn't going to unnecessarily impact other people. That doesn't create a new criteria. It's just more information that we wanted to share with the city, and so the city could address some of these concerns from citizens, because the last thing the applicant wants to do is have a development nobody likes. We want to work with everybody, neighbors, businesses, city, to show them that this is a really good project. And so that parking demand, I agree with everything Mr. Chandler told you. I think it's well done. It really highlights that there's an abundance of parking and there won't be a parking problem if this is approved. I did want to add that the same consultant has done a citywide parking study as part of this advisory committee for the city on parking. And so the city, I think, has confidence in the consultant we used because they're using them. And that study is very consistent. The numbers aren't identical, but the percentages for peak hours, the percentages for Saturdays, the percentage for weekday parking demand, and then parking availability, very consistent between those two studies. So I wanted to point that out too. Now, on the other appeal issues, I'm not going to say much. The height, I think, was resolved by city council. The alley is resolved because we didn't challenge that condition. I think the parking restrictions are just applying the code. Everybody should have to live by the same rules, and we're agreeing with that. I'm going to have Nick, the construction guy, talk a little bit about dust first, because we agree with Mr. Chandler that, if there are complaints, obviously they'll be dealt with, but we don't think they're going to be complaints. And Nick will tell you kind of what he's going to do because he's going to be in charge of making sure that there are no complaints.
Okay, thank you.
So Nick Smith, Senior Project Manager with Emmerich Builders. Been doing projects like this for just shy of 30 years. In this particular location, the building covers a good portion of the construction site. So that in itself will have concrete covering it, which eliminates a lot of the dust. When we are doing the earthwork, we The cities and all other jurisdictions, I'm sure the Dalles as well, provides us with a meter that we can hook to fire hydrants where we can water the site to eliminate dust. A lot of the earthwork on this project is scheduled to happen during the raining season. So we will eliminate a lot of dust that way. The lot behind where we have the 35, 36, whatever it is, parking stalls is not going to be an area where we will be parking. It'll be material staged there. So it's the traffic of trucks driving over dirt roads, which we will not have, that generally generate the most dust on construction sites.
Okay, so I've hit kind of the main legal type issues, trying to keep it as far away from legalese as possible, and hopefully I did that. And Nick handled the dust. So Mary Hanlon now, I think, is going to get up and give you kind of just a brief project overview, so you understand kind of where the applicant's coming from on a broader level.
Okay.
Hi. Hi, thank you for seeing us tonight. In light of this appeal, I would like to go on the record as stating that the accomplishment of a development like Basalt Commons in the Dalles is not an easy task. Putting together the financing, given the increased housing costs, the construction costs, the interest rates, and no comparable projects are just a few of the challenges that are faced when you try to do something like this. I've been working in housing for the last 35 years, and Basalt Commons brings together all of the positive aspects of that work, the creation of housing, the addition of jobs, the revitalization of a historic downtown, the infill of nature of this. The lot's been empty. It's been underutilized for over 20 years. The rich history of the Dalles it deserves more than one building built in the last 50 years, and we'd like to contribute to that. There's a severe housing crisis in the Dalles. Most of the rental housing in the Dalles was built over 50 years ago. More than 35% of the population in the Dalles rents. The housing supply has not increased with the population and jobs. Multifamily housing is increasing in price without a corresponding change in the supply or quality. There was a 29% increase in housing costs in 2021 and 2021. You get it. The current housing market in the Dalles can absorb right now today 236 additional multifamily housing units without any new renters before the occupancy rate falls below 95% occupancy. 500 multifamily housing units were identified as needed between 2022 and 2026, and none were added. This project creates economic development and vitality and an infusion of capital downtown. The construction will generate a significant economic impact. 124 FTE full-time jobs are estimated at 5.8 million in payroll. An additional 84 FTE will be created in Wasco County from indirect and induced costs. That's an additional 14.4 million. The ongoing impacts of this project will support over 30 jobs or 1.5 million in annual payroll. In the first 10 years, this project is estimated to create 478 FTEs jobs and $16.9 million in compensation. And that's not talking about with just this many more people, with 100 people living downtown, you'll have about $2 million in disposable income being spent in downtown. There is not a parking problem. A healthy community is not trade-off a perceived future housing parking problem in exchange for residential housing being built. It both visibly as well as reinforced by two studies. There's adequate parking. We'll have 35 parking spots with the building, 4 motorcycle spots on site, 20 directly surrounding the building. All the tenants will have free bus passes. There's bike parking in each unit. The building is walking distance to a grocery store, thankfully now, coffee, restaurants, doctors, gifts, books, banks, office supplies, and many more things. We don't want parking problems for our residents or for the commercial tenants or our neighbors, and we will address these issues if they arise. Basalt Commons will be a beautiful, well-designed addition to the Dalles in an appropriate location. It will it's designed by one of the best architecture firms in the Northwest, Hacker Architects, and it will be built by one of the best contractors in the Northwest, Emmerich Builders. The ground floor has been designed to address the need for industrial space in the form of a brewery. We don't have a brewery yet, but it will have that capacity, and there are limited places where you could do something like that. So we're designing around that, knowing that it's a desire. The residents will have wonderful amenities. It's an elevator building. It's a secure building. It'll have air conditioning and washer and dryer in every unit. The ground floor will have workspaces, both for like conferences and work, as well as like a workspace where you could build things. It's going to have a beautiful lobby area. The rents are market rate with 20% of the units at 80% of the MFI, the where the housing prices are now. So 2 people working a minimum job will be able to afford these apartments. We anticipate that at least 30% of the units will be occupied as by seniors who do not want to maintain or renovate a home, and that'll open up that single family market. We're always willing to work with our neighbors, and we're committed to doing that, and we'd like to move forward. Thank you.
Well, that's all we have. Unless you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Does commission have any questions?
I do have a question. Have you considered, I noticed that the plan, there are a lot of studio apartments and 1-bedroom apartments. There's a real need for 2 and 3-bedroom rental apartments. And have you considered maybe redesigning this so that there would be mostly 2-bedroom and some 3-bedroom units? That would greatly reduce the parking problem, and it would provide some very much needed larger rental units.
There are a few things with regard to the 2 bedrooms. It's interesting that you're saying that, because right now we're trying to make the decision about whether to reduce the number of 2 bedrooms. We have 16 and we were thinking of reducing them. We just finished a project in Canby a few years ago, and it's studios and 1 bedrooms, which was unusual in a community like that because it's the same size as the Dalles, and it's also sort of rural, a little bit more suburban, but it wasn't at the time we started, and we've been at 100% occupancy the whole time. And so the reason is because you can get studios and 1 bedrooms, you can get the rents lower, and most people are making the decisions based on cost rather than the size. It's great to hear you say that 2 bedrooms are needed, because that's one of the decisions we're trying to make right now. And so we'll definitely consider that. And it's pretty neat down in Canby. As I said, 30% of the residents are seniors, and some of them were trying to wait and get the apartment next to them so they'd have a room for family to come. A few people did that. So there is, you have to kind of figure out the best guess there. 3 bedrooms is not practical for a project like this, because you'd have to charge so much per square foot, because it's a balance between paying for the construction costs, getting the rents to equal it, and there's no comparable for any rents for new construction here. And so it's a balancing act of getting something that the bank will accept. And that's done through the rents and the costs balancing out. And they set the requirements for what your debt coverage ratio has to be and all of those things. And so we're trying to get this under the wire, and let me tell you, it's a challenge.
Any questions? Okay. Would you mind restating what the percentage of units will be that are below market rate, at market rate? Just recap that in your.
Yeah, so 80% will be market rate, and that's just kind of right in the middle of the income for town. And then 20% of the units will be at 80%, so slightly less than at middle income.
Slightly less market rate. Okay. And if you don't mind just speaking up a little bit.
Sorry.
So the people in the back can hear you. Second question, would you mind recapping what you have determined the economic benefits would be for this in regards to jobs, new business, and disposable income being used in downtown?
Yeah, those are interesting numbers. So construction's estimated to generate 124 jobs. about 5.8 million in payroll. 84 jobs will be created in Wasco County from the indirect effects, and that's another 14 million, 14.4. The ongoing impacts of the project are anticipated to support over 30 jobs, which is 1 million in annual payroll. In the first 10 years, the project's estimated to create 478 jobs at 16.9 million. And then just a very loose, and this is a very low conservative number of if you take 30% of the income, that to get $2 million in, just because people spend the money in the adjacent area. And so that comes out to about 2 million a year.
Okay. Commissioner Portella or Pena, do you have any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the list is the appellant. Does the appellant care to speak, make their presentation, or are we just letting the appellant's appeal and the staff report speak for itself? Please come up. Again, just limit your presentation to 10 minutes, and then if we have questions, we'll ask those afterward. And just make sure you state your name before you get started.
My name is Bob Wickwire. And to start with, I rent space from Mary now across the street. So I hope that there's 116 units that are rented out that they all want to buy furniture from me. Okay. I wrote this out. Please know, I understand that this appeal is supposed to be based on the parking plan being legal. I'm not an attorney. My appeal is based on common sense, not legal interpretation. My wife and I own Downey Furniture. We purchased the store from Debbie's parents 2 years ago. The store is located at the corner of Jefferson and 3rd Street. The store has been there for 56 years and currently 3rd generation owned. When we found out the developer was planning a 5-story building with over 115 apartments and only 35 on-site parking spots, we thought there would be no way this project would be approved by planning or city council. My father-in-law owned the vacant lot next to the old Sunset Motors lot directly across from our store. He was approached by the developer or someone representing the developer to purchase his lot along with the old Sunset Motors lot. He was told that they were purchasing both lots to help handle the parking needs of this project. Guess what? Within 3 months, they sold both lots to the city of the Dalles at a profit, which I'm sure you guys already know. Okay. And I have a question about that. Those 2 lots are going to be developed. Can tenants park there? Will they be able to park there? I can't ask questions.
Finish your presentation. Then
Okay. Okay.
Questions and stuff.
I misplaced the copy of the parking study. However, I do not need a parking study to know that the parking is already a challenge for us. A couple of things that I remember is that typically a customer will walk 3.5 blocks to visit a storefront. How many of you actually believe that? And most of our customers are elderly, in wheelchairs and in walkers. You think they're going to roll for 3 blocks to come look at furniture? Ain't going to happen. The other thing is the potential shared parking in private lots. Has the developer or the city secured any of this parking? Speaking of which, I'm going to address what Mr. Chandler said a little bit ago about the parking spot across from the farm store. While getting a haircut this morning, I noticed that the private lot between the barbershop and Von Borstel's had cones up and signs saying private parking. I asked Mike, the barber, what was going on with the parking and was told soon after the farm stand store opened, employees and customers started to park in the private lot, therefore making them close off that parking. He said they originally talked to him about charging $50 a month. Then they came back to him and said, you can park there. You have been all along, and we're not going to charge you to park. Okay. So that is different than what you stated. Okay. And the cones were there today. No parking. Already there are parking issues with the new store and surrounding businesses. In my original letter, I voiced concerns that this would do to our business. Like I said, many of our customers are elderly and require either walkers or wheelchairs. I stated that the parking solutions needed to be figured out before the project proceeds. I suggested these solutions may include dedicated spaces, time-limited spaces, and possible meters. The response was that there is a 2024 downtown parking assessment, which is anticipated to be completed by the fall of this year. Why not wait until this is done before proceeding? Next, I do not understand the restricted zone. I hope that someone can explain to me why tenants cannot park on 3rd Street in front of the project or Laughlin Street during the hours of 9 to 6. However, they can park on 3rd in front of our store or on Jefferson on the side of our store without any restrictions. This issue has forced me to attend a previous city council meeting, and I have to say that I was very disappointed. I, along with another business owner who is here tonight, paid the $250 appeal fee to voice our concerns over this project. I have had several people ask me why I'm pursuing this, as it is apparent that the decision is already made and I'm wasting my time. It has always been my impression that local government is to represent the people in its city. If that was truly the case, the mayor, the city council, planning department would survey surrounding businesses, monitor social media comments regarding this. If you were to do either, you would find the majority of the people are against this project for various reasons, but that does not seem to matter. This whole process has been far from transparent. In closing, I would like to ask the mayor, city council, planning department, if you were me and owned a business that had been there for over 5 decades, and this was being forced down your throat with no clear answers regarding parking for your store, would you still feel the same way about the project?
So to answer your initial question, would the tenants be allowed to park in that parking lot that is currently being developed?
The answer is yes, it's a public parking lot.
Yeah. Do we have any other specific questions or want to follow up on any of the questions that the app or appellant had?
Oh, I'm good.
Nope.
All good? Good. Do you want to clarify, take a moment and just clarify any of the specific questions that you had?
I want you guys to tell me about the restricted zone. Why on one side of the building they can't park and the other side of the building, which my building is on, they can park with no restrictions?
Will you pull up that
Yeah.
map?
I could pull it up. It's going to take a couple of minutes, but ultimately that zone was adopted in 1986. So that's what's in place. So that the reason there is not a restriction in front of your property is because that's not what was established in 1986 when that zone was adopted.
So do you honestly think with the 700 or plus parking spaces available all around town that you guys counted, do you think they're going to park 3 blocks away, or they're going to park across the street at my store where there's no restrictions right across the street?
I can't comment on the behavior of a tenant. And
You and I, we all know that answer.
I can't comment for what
Okay.
likes to where they're going to park.
Okay.
If you would like to go to city council or request that zone is expanded, that is a possibility. That is the only way that zone can be expanded, is if it's city council that does it. So it very well, it can happen. I mean, any request to city council, feel free to make it.
It's not a bad idea because that map is a little shaped a little funky.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
And honestly, you guys, really, you wouldn't be concerned if you were me with a business 55 years and there's no restrictions on parking with 115 units going next door?
Well, that's what we're here to talk about.
Okay. That's why I'm talking.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's my presentation.
Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Portell or Commissioner Pena, any specific questions or comments for the appellant? Okay, no. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next is, does anyone wish to testify in favor of the appeal? So that is in favor of the appeal. You are not in favor of how the parking is currently being decided upon. If you could just kind of orderly come up. When you do come up, please state your name and address. Please keep your presentation to under 5 minutes. You don't have to use all the 5 minutes. And again, if you've already submitted written testimony, there's no need to just come up and reread your written testimony. We read it.
I have been referenced. I am the father-in-law.
Okay. And your name and address, please.
My name is Ron Vergeer, I own both of the Downey buildings, which are on Jefferson Street between Second and Third. My address is 4679 Mill Creek Road here in the Dalles.
Perfect.
Okay. The reason that parking limitation is the way it is set up. David Thomas and I were in the process of having parking meters removed at that time, at which time we were having issues with David's employees parking across the street, my Jefferson side. We left the parking meters in there and did not extend the parking limitations area because of the parking conditions that were existing at the time. We were told that at some point, the parking commission would put the extension of the removal of the existing parking meters up to and including the Salvation Army at the time. That was never done, apparently. Okay. Also, that was referenced today was the construction site down in Canby. Tuesday, I spent most of the day in Canby talking to the employees, managers, and owners of the businesses surrounding the region, surrounding the Dahlia apartments. Wells Fargo has had more than one person from the apartment complex. Wells Fargo is directly across the street from the front entrance, from their parking lot, and had them towed. Both occasions, or one specific occasion, and it is supposed to be the second occasion, both times it was a resident of the Dahlia. Key Bank, which is just half a block away, has had verbal confrontation with people parking themselves from the Dahlia and a trailer in the private parking area during the week, during business hours. The city of Canby has recognized the issues that have developed in their area, in their downtown region around the Dahlia. They're in the process of setting up a committee between the city police, city staff, and the regional managers and owners of the businesses in that downtown area. The purpose of this committee is to establish new parking regulations, enforcement of those regulations, and any other adaptive status that they have to come up with. The current parking volume availability in the downtown Canby area, I would guess to be at least twice what it is here. I have gone through some of the businesses that I have talked to. Let's see. The physical therapy that is in the therapeutic associative physical therapist, the employees, her comment was, I can always find a place to park in the morning when I come to work. I won't walk more than a block. Okay. Thai Dash Restaurant, which is directly across the street on the north side of the Dahlia. During the construction phase, their sales were huge. The contractors and the construction workers ate there a lot. As soon as that construction phase was over, they have seen a decline in their revenues by 15 to 20%. Those are from the owner's father, who sold the restaurant to his daughter. There are 3 spots in front of the restaurant that are always occupied by about 4:30. Parking in the downtown core area for Canby is 2 hours up to 7 o'clock. Once you get to 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock isn't that far. You don't have to have any move your car. You don't have to do anything after that 2-hour period. You're into an open parking time zone. Little Love Resale had no issues. Willamette Coffee House, which is on an adjacent corner to the Dahlia, had they're predominantly a walk-up business, and they have a lot of people coming from the Dahlia to them because they are a local coffee house, and there is nothing inside the facility. The restaurant that is on the main floor has shut down, so they go to that coffee shop. Two businesses specifically, the Canby Station Cleaners has put up their own private signs that parking 15 minutes only, because they were not having people come in. There was no parking. They were going to a different downtown parking or cleaner.
Okay, and that is 5 minutes. So if you just want to do like a 15-second wrap up, that'd be great.
All right. The city police, my discussion with the chief of police, parking is enforced by complaint only. Due to staffing issues, they do not respond to parking issues typically on that day. They put it on assignment to the following day to respond to that issue. They are very hopeful that the number of calls that they currently receive about parking issues declines once this committee has taken place.
Okay. Thank you so much.
That's all I have, unless there's questions.
I don't have any questions. Any questions?
Nope. Good.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, next person, please. And when you come up, please state your name and address for the record. Yeah, just come on up and don't fight each other on the way up to the microphone. That's all I ask.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Charles Gomez, owner of the Granada Theater with my wife, Deborah, who is also present here today, 223 East 2nd Street. And I would like to address some of the points that have been made. Initially, we have half a dozen full-time employees from Basalt Commons Corporation that stands behind this project, a multi-million-dollar project, that are speaking the pros and the advantageous points of this project. And really the voice of the people here have fallen short and quiet, as we do not have the strength of this type of presentation. I would think, in all fairness, our city council, our planning commission, all our city hall personnel are taxed running the city. I would think it would be appropriate for possibly the city to appoint a council that looks into and specializes in developments of this nature and this magnitude in and of small towns, to give the people and the citizens of this town a proper and stronger voice in this debate. Now, the presentation of 789 parking spots was concerning to me. We own the Granada Theater, and there's a very nice restaurant bar right down the street from us, on the same side of the street. It's at the other end of the block. You wouldn't think it would affect us at all. But at lunch hour, evening hours, when there's a musician playing or something, what comes into factor that people are not considering is convenience. People will fight for parking on the same side of the street as that establishment, while across the street, 25 feet away, there may be 8 empty parking spots. It's an issue of convenience. Have we not all gone to Safeway and thought, God, I wish they had more parking spots here to be a little more convenient to go into the store and shop? And yet you turn around and you look over your shoulder and there's several hundred empty parking spots remotely removed from the front establishment entrance. It's a point of convenience that is not being taken into consideration. I would think 35 spots to be absolutely ridiculous. I would think several hundred parking spots provided would be absolutely ridiculous. I do not want to see an increase of usage in that area, which will result in an increase in maintenance, which will result in an increase of personnel, which will result in an increase of costs. Can I not look into a crystal ball and see are parking meters right around the corner 5 or 10 years down the road to pay for some of these costs? Have we looked at the long-term invasive effects of this property on our small community? We have had also the issue of height requirements, and I have yet to see anything other than blueprints and artist renditions of a solo property unsurrounded by any other properties. And in the words of Albert Einstein, everything is relative. I would like to see that building with a computer actual generation of that building with 35 cars, with 135 cars, with 235 cars around it. I would like to see a computer generated actual rendition of that building with its surrounding buildings of the neighborhood. Now, my wife just took a few minutes and put together her rendition, maybe not actually to scale, but I would have thought the Basalt Commons would have put something to scale for us, and the city should have demanded something, not a rendition, but something actually in place. And when you see the size of the building, to the best of our ability to size, not showing parking, not showing commerce, not showing cars and traffic, you say to yourself, oh my gosh, it's massive. It is way beyond what I considered was going in that place based on the artist rendition. So I have 15 of these flyers that we printed out that I will leave at the front if anyone else wishes to see them. And I would hope that the height requirement and the parking requirements be reconsidered and possibly the entire project be placed on the back burner until all of these questions have satisfied the citizens and taxpayers of this community. Thank you for your time.
Okay, next person, please. Sure, that's fine. Remember to state your name and address for the record.
Kathy Bayer and 905 East 7th. Kathy Bayer, Bayer, Lake Aspirin.
Okay, go ahead.
And 905 East 7th. So when you were talking about the available parking, are we talking about the available parking out of the 112 spaces that's not private? I mean,
So, sorry, real quick. Will you just speak into the microphone a little bit better?
I'm sorry, I don't like microphone. So when we're given that, there were, 421 empty stalls at one point in the day, and there's only 112 public stalls or public parking. How many of those 112 were in the empty spaces? You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's private, has anything been worked out yet to make those 421 empty stalls available stalls for the public?
So are you referring to a shared parking agreement?
Yeah, or, I mean, if you say it sounded like at first there were 420 empty spaces at any given time for anyone to park in at any time. And then when Mr. Cornett asked about whether or not they were public or private, it was 112 public ones. So that begs the question, that leaves 350 some odd spaces that are private, that would have to have an agreement to be available for the public.
Yeah, so this study is looking at spaces, just looking at spaces.
Not available spaces.
Not taking into consideration anything to do. They just look at occupancy of those spaces.
There's 112 public available spaces that may or may not be used throughout the day and night.
112 could be used, however, they
Right.
could be used.
Do you need the overnight parking permit? Because
Do residents downtown, there's a free overnight parking permit.
the tenants would have to get like a month-long permit or whatever every month.
Effectively, I think it's an annual.
It's an annual permit.
Okay. So those were my two questions. And then, what else? What was the other thing? Yeah, because it sounds like a lot of empty stalls, but are they usable and available for the tenants to use at this time, at the time that the whole project's being approved?
Yeah, so for sure, there's those 112. There's 23 that are being built in the next year, right across the street from the development. But then the rest, there's the opportunity for any local business owner, if they choose to do so, to enter into a shared parking agreement with the developer. This is a common parking management strategy. Some businesses are only open from 9 to 5. So during that period of time between, 5 and 9 again, those parking lots just sit vacant. So it could open up an opportunity for a local business owner to enter into a shared parking agreement with the developer.
Okay, but as of now, none of those are in place, and
I can't speak
forward without really knowing that those spots are available.
Yeah, I can't speak to a shared parking agreement. That would be something established with the developer.
Okay. Yep. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, next person, please.
Ms. Susan Ross, and my address is 1000 East 16th Place here in the Dalles.
Okay.
And I would like to bring up an ancient history item. Most of you probably weren't around, some of you maybe were, but one of our children here in the Dalles was abducted from one of the public parking places down by the railroad. She was going to lunch. She worked at Payless. Excuse me, she worked at Penny's. And she was raped and killed during the middle of the day. Is there anybody that's going to monitor these city parking lots that are kind of out of the way? Would any of you guys want to park there any time of the day? I will not. I will not. And I'm sure there may be others in that same position. I might add that her family has never recovered from the brutal way she was dismissed, I guess you might say. My father-in-law, who was a state policeman, had to identify her. He had watched her from a baby grow up. Wasn't the most pleasant thing for him to have done. So that's my complaint about the parking.
All right. Thank you.
My name is Dan Meter. I live at 911 East 7th Street here in town. And I just want to make a couple of observations and maybe ask a couple of questions. For example, does anyone in the room actually think that all of the 116 units of this development will only have one car each? That's pretty improbable. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the process, citizen involvement, and public participation. I congratulate the way this meeting is being held. I liked hearing from the applicants at the start because that's the first time we've heard any outright overview statements in the hearing on the conditional use for the height of the building, or in the hearing for the in front of the council on the appeal. They simply reacted to what was brought forward and didn't, as defending themselves. They didn't. It's never been a formal presentation publicly of their process in the planning realm. And I think that's a real mistake. And I want to point out that, in order to show you the magnitude, I think, of what we're missing, the number of properties that were involved in the final decision that received notice of the decision were within 100 feet of the property lines of the subject property. And I counted them up, and it's about 15. And of those, there were 4 people who established themselves of having having the right of party of record. Bob Wickwire is filed the only appeal, I believe, and I was already a party of record. And yet you see the room full tonight, and that's from Facebook, not from public involvement activities by the city. It's been on Facebook for the last week, and a lot of people are here because of that. And there's a lot of interest. I would like to have a better description of market rate in terms of rentals, so that the audience can understand that these are meant to be upscale. These are not moderate and middle income. They're supposedly, I know what the rates are in Dahlia. It can be, and I won't repeat them here, but I think the city would be well served to back up and hold a full-blown public hearing where they can make a full presentation as long as they want, and questions can be asked, because there hasn't been that ability really until tonight. And I think you're making a mistake to just walk through this like you are. And I want to speak also as quickly as I can about the Downey Furniture and Sleep Center. Those businesses have been there for 50 years, over 50 years actually, and the only parking they have available is on street. And to not protect that in some manner is going to cost them dearly. There has to be some, when you have the ability to do it, you can strike a condition of approval that says we encourage the city to expand that district if it has to be expanded. You could say, the heck with the district, protect it. I don't know why that district is the key to limiting parking. I think you could be able to do it without that, but I don't know all the ins and outs of that. But those 2 businesses, if they're not protected, will not survive. And you need to be thinking about that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next person, please. Next. Sure.
I'm Anthony Mansu. I live at 612 East 3rd. I was noticing on that chart about the green zone, it is inaccurate in front of my property, because there's 2 units that are always I'm both my whole parking is full, and I might actually have a vacancy, which would add another 1 to 2 vehicles that would add more parking to that on weekends and at night, let alone half of that in the daytime. Another couple questions I had concern is about, what about parades? When all those cars have to get off of 2nd and 3rd Street, let alone everyone else coming down to watch the parade, where are they going to park? Or where are the people coming down to watch the parade going to park? And then, let's see. And realistically, people will only going to want to walk like half a block to get to their apartment to carry their groceries or their kids in. So that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, next person, please.
How's it going? My name's John Schmid, based in 420 East 4th Street. I can see basalt basically from my house. We see a lot of the green zone and how there's enough room for parking to accommodate right now, but we're not really talking about future-proofing the area. And so what does that look like when we accommodate, 150 more cars are we still in the green zone? And if we're starting to grow this town and revitalize downtown, how long will it take to get to yellow, orange, red? How many more of these meetings when we talk about adding more buildings, adding more businesses? When do we become, or when do we get to yellow, red? So I'm just trying to understand that. And with this new building, you can't build more parking spots. Once this building is made, we can't go back. So I guess my question to you is, yeah, what does that look like once we add all those parking, or once those parking spots are taken?
I think it's undetermined. I mean, it would be you'd have to figure out. I mean, the numbers are in the report of how many. I think up to I think there's a mention of up to 199 parking spaces that may be needed, but there's also multiple mixed use development reductions to your overall parking space. So you could effectively take that number, maybe worst case scenario number, and just subtract it from the available spaces. I think that would probably give you a good idea. If there's 400 some parking spaces available right now, let's say worst case scenario, there's 200, that'll give you about 200. So yeah, it might get closer to that yellow area.
So if this goes through, we'll be in the yellow already.
I can't speak to that.
Okay. All right. That's my question. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, next person. Okay, we may be, okay, yeah. Oops.
My name is Warren Sawyer, Sawyer Properties, 500 East 3rd Street, the Dalles, Oregon. And I submitted a more detailed comment, which you guys got yesterday. This one I'm actually going to read. I know I'd rather just talk it off the cuff, but you have a copy of that. It's more for just public transparency. Each and every person in this room, including the developers, city staff, planning commissioners, attorneys, parking study engineers, citizens, everyone in this room and the community at large knows the development is not providing adequate off-street parking as proposed. And there will be a significant negative impact on parking downtown over a wide area of adjacent uses, including businesses, existing residents, and customers of downtown, along with future residents, commercial tenants, and customers of the development. And yet it feels like we're going to do it anyway because we can, and because of one word, may. This all boils down to one primary issue: interpretation of the municipal code, stating that the parking requirements may be waived. And the intent of the people who drafted that code, whether it's a choice of the city planning and planning commission to determine to waive the requirements, or the applicant of a development telling city planning it's their right to waive the requirements. Municipal codes and laws are most certainly drafted and approved by city council to protect and give direction to city planning and other city authorities, not the other way around. If you're going to interpret what the drafters of the code intended, then you must interpret that the code was written for the city to control and be the authority, not the applicant and attorneys of the development. This is obvious, just makes common sense, and asks that the Planning Commission approve the appeal that the minimum parking requirements should not be waived to just 35 parking spaces. The attorney for the development is interpreting that the applicant is in control of waiving the parking requirements and not our city staff or elected and appointed officials. Interpreting one word, may, to be in favor of the applicant and not the city.
Most people in this room and community would disagree. No matter how many words or pages he writes, it is his interpretation, and another attorney could have a completely different interpretation. That's how attorneys work. The attorney makes note of 789 on-street parking spaces in a 21 block area around the proposed project to support adequate parking. In an email I received from Joshua Trandler, Community Development Director, quote, on-street parking is never counted toward total parking provided with any development. So which way is it? With regard to condition 6.f of the administrative decision, Municipal Code 6.08.020 prohibited parking zone. I ask that the Planning Commission support the appeal of the site plan review until the City Council has an opportunity to amend the municipal code to include downtown on-street parking to the east, north, and south of the proposed development, and enlist the help of businesses and residences in those areas to amend the code. So you have that public input on what would be appropriate. There's some of those zones that, are right in front of residential houses. Those people should be allowed to park in front of their house, not Basalt Commons. They should also, many of the parking spaces in there are just going to be overutilized. And unless this zone is increased, I would say to at least Monroe Street, could be farther, but at least Monroe Street, both south and north, all of 2nd Street, all of 3rd Street, 3rd Street in front of our business, or my son's business, excuse me, 4th Street especially in front of these residences, all up and down 4th Street. That's going to have a huge impact on available parking unless those zones are increased. And I appreciate your time. Any questions?
Questions?
Okay. Hey, look at that, 5 minutes.
Okay, next person, please. All right, final call for anyone who wishes to test in favor of the appeal. If not, we're going to move on to people who are in opposition to the appeal. That is in favor of how the current parking design is laid out.
For Paula, Todd Carpenter, 216 East 5th Street, the Dalles, Oregon, and 209 East 2nd Street. I had a whole thing I want to talk about, but there's a lot of emotions in this room. I think some of the things we can all agree on that I see, the complaints are with the 6.08.020 needs to be extended. I don't think that's the job of this commission. It doesn't seem like.
Exactly what that is, just for.
That is the parking restrictions to Laughlin Street. Needs to be extended to, past that. And I think everybody in this room kind of has a super motion about that. It'd be good for you guys to recommend that to City Council. I think that's what you probably need to do. It needs to be extended and it probably needs to be revised. I think that's pretty important. There's a perception of a lack of transparency in the parking study. It sounds like to me. That was a private study done, so I can kind of understand how it wasn't, brought up to people, and I think that's okay. But the city needs to get, again, not your issue, but in my mind, the city needs to get behind or get ahead of, the parking problem. I think to Chuck's point, he said, sorry, I'm gonna put on my glasses. Convenience of parking is a challenge, and I agree. I hate going downtown and walking. I walk all the time, but when I have to pull up and do things in town, I like to be right there. And so I think that, the city council needs to get behind and get ahead of development. I mean, I think we all can agree that economic vitality is important. Housing for the community is important, especially with the service industry, meaning retail people. I think that the redevelopment of unused property is important. And I think all of us can probably agree on that. There's some real, it seems like there's some real issues around the parking thing. And the planning commission is not really maybe you're part of it, but the city council really needs to sort of change that. So there should be some recommendations, I think, coming out of the planning commission to the city council that they make some changes. I did have the opportunity to talk to Mr. Sawyer today, which was a really enlightening conversation. I mean, I didn't even know about the 6.08020. But I think that, he and I, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but from my standpoint, I think, we want to welcome development and economic vitality. We want to support downtown development. I think the staff and Ms. Hanlon have identified a lot of things and actually went over and above in a lot of the things that they've done. City council and planning should provide alternate parking options for long-term strategy. I think that's really important. I don't know what's being done with that. Maybe I don't know enough about what city council is doing, but I think that's really important, especially when you're saying, you're supporting urban renewal and urban redevelopment. We need to understand parking, and the city needs to take that on. There's a lot of properties downtown that don't have parking. Like if I did some upgrades at Last Stop, if I put 9 units or 10 units up there, where would I park people? It just can't happen. So the city really needs to get behind, city council really needs to get behind a parking plan, long-term strategy, and figuring that out. And I think if we could address, or, the city could address those things, a lot of these people's emotions and fears of lack of parking and things like that, and a lot of the perceptions would probably go away. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Quick question for you, for those of you who just don't know you and don't recognize your name. You are the Todd Carpenter who developed the recreational building. Is it the process of made Last Stop?
That was my evil twin. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it was. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next person, please.
Good evening, Nathaniel Stice, 1010 G Street in the Dalles here. And I just want to thank you for holding this hearing on this important project and taking the time to listen to those who are both in favor of the project and the concerns around it. And I just appreciate that Todd called out the emotion in the room. And I appreciate that when we talk about the future of our community and the future of our downtown, there are a lot of emotions on both sides. And I just want to thank you all for your service here, and also praise your staff for doing a very thorough job of giving you a report on the code and how you should think about applying the city code. And so, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into the details on parking, because I think you have a very detailed report by professionals who've done their job in helping you to think about how to apply code in this case. I will talk for a second about housing in this town, and it's something that I have been working on with city leadership and community leaders for about 8 years now. And I know that efforts to get downtown housing have been going on in the Dalles for well over a decade, with barriers coming up against project after project. And it's always been one of the cornerstones that we've talked about for downtown prosperity. If you talk to anyone who works on Main Street anywhere in the state, and I talk to a lot of people in my day job about Main Street development, having people live where the businesses are is how you have a successful downtown. And we have an opportunity to do that here. What I'm afraid of is if we mire down this project in appeals, if we let this one slip through our fingers, it will be another decade before we have another opportunity. And we'll continue to see empty windows in downtown. Businesses continue to struggle to stay open because we aren't putting the people where the businesses are. I think this commission is very familiar with the housing crisis. I know that I've served on a technical advisory committee for you all on the housing crisis before, so I don't think I need to go into too much detail there. I will just end with talking about a parking problem this town has, which is we have a lot of it. When I walk downtown, and I'm a millennial weirdo, I walk everywhere, including to buy mattresses and hardware at Sawyer's. So there are always open parking spaces. And for the time that I've lived here, and I hang out with too many city planners and bureaucrats and other folks, it's a constant joke that if we have to park more than a block away from where we're going, we have a parking problem. So I'm very grateful that now I have numbers to put around that show that most of the time, including during our peak, that we have plenty of parking available in the downtown. So with that, I just encourage you to take this opportunity to help meet some of the needed housing demands in our community, and to help create another cornerstone for downtown prosperity. And I will just end by saying I appreciate the comments from people in the room tonight and the passion that they show for the community and thinking about its future.
Thank you. Okay, next person, please.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Corchi. My address is 5663 Mill Creek Road. I'm here tonight actually as part of the Dalles Main Street. I'm working with them as a consultant. I've been doing that since about May or June, I think. So I'm fairly new to this project. I don't know a lot about it. I've spoke with Mary just briefly, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the goals of what Main Street is. I don't know if you are very familiar with the program, but it's a nationally recognized program, and it's been implemented in the Dalles since 2011. Is when we started, and we've had a little bit of variations of how the program has worked. So now we're in the process of reorganizing the board and revitalizing that process, that program. And so I'm kind of here to help with that. And then hopefully in the future, be able to hire a full-time executive director and to keep that program going. One of the pillars of the Main Street program is, and there's 4 pillars: promotion, design, economic vitality, and outreach or organization. So clearly, this project falls into that category of economic vitality. That's something that is really important to this community. I've grown up here. I've lived here all my life. I've raised my children here. I believe in this town. I think it has tremendous possibility. I think we are just lacking in some of the sort of the main things like Nate spoke to, in bringing those businesses, people to the businesses. I think that is really important. And this is a good project to develop what we want to see in terms of our economic vitality, is developing an atmosphere of collaboration with the downtown businesses and partners to create opportunities to invest in downtown and strengthen the economy as a whole. So we're really looking forward to doing that with this project. We also want to touch on the fact that, yes, this will help with a lot of the housing need that we see, and the most recent documentation of that and the severely constrained housing market. I think this is a really great opportunity for us to lessen that impact in other areas, and hopefully keep that going. Also, I think the walkability of this community is something that hasn't really been taken fully advantage of yet. It's actually a really lovely town to walk in, and there's a lot of great amenities. I love our new grocery store, all the coffee shops, there's gyms, there's restaurants, there's many wonderful stores here. We have a children's museum, the library is close, we have wonderful parks. I think just building something that we haven't really done construction of this scope and scale in the last 50 years, and maybe even since, the 1920s, 100 years ago. So having people downtown and providing 24/7 eyes on the street, I think that's really important. And it's going to bring thousands, if not millions of dollars into the support, which is going to exist and support our existing restaurants and business, and hopefully grow those as well. And so I'm just really wanting to ensure that we're looking all together at the future. I think that if there is issues in terms of what the parking issue may happen in the future, I think Nate's correct that I don't necessarily think we have a parking problem. I think we have a potential of that. And I kind of hope we do get to the point where we have a little bit of a parking problem. It would be a nice problem to have in terms of being able to have a lot more vitality and a lot more busyness and traffic and people attending and all of these wonderful places that we call home. That's it.
Thank you so much. 。 All right, next person, please.
I'll wait till she's ready.
Yeah.
Beth Stelzer, 404 West 12th Street, the Dalles. I feel like a lot of personal interest in this project. I put a lot of pretty much all of my eggs in having faith in downtown being revitalized with the grocery store that I just put in. And I knew about Mary's project pre-buying the property, which definitely influenced that. And obviously, the sooner that happens for me, the more excited I am. I kind of look at this from a few different perspectives. As a business owner, I feel like I have a unique perspective because I have an establishment, exact same situation, maybe a little smaller, copy and pasted in Hood River in the Heights. And I think that that is kind of a similar community. It's not downtown the same way downtown Hood River is. It's close to residential. There are a lot of businesses that people do drive to. And if I didn't have the amount of people walking to me and making me part of their daily routine, I've already seen the impact of that in my business. For example, in Hood River, 40% of my sales are after 4 p.m. It's between 4 and 6. In downtown the Dalles, they drop off a cliff at 4. And I would say I maybe do 15% of my business after 4. And I know it's very new, but it's downtown becomes a ghost town pretty much after 4:30. And I lived in Hood River for 2 years. I lived in Portland for 2 years. Very familiar with downtown areas of those cities. And something that hasn't really been considered is the needs of parking are absolutely, there's so much polarity in the parking needs of businesses versus the parking needs of residents. People who are paying rent for an apartment of this size, for the most part, will be working and active, and they're not going to be sitting in their apartment at 1:30 on a weekday. And I got to see that a lot. I stayed in a apartment building next to some really big food cart hubs and residential hubs in downtown Portland. And it was impossible to find, it was very difficult to find parking as a resident, because of businesses during the day, but you didn't need to. And it actually really incentivized walking as a resident. If for some reason you needed to be home during the day, then you would make the choice to leave your car in the parking lot and walk and do your business downtown versus pulling out of your driveway and going somewhere. And also, as an employer, I've done a lot of hiring over the course of the last couple of months, and there were 3 prospective employees that I had, one from Vancouver, one from Southern United States, another from just, I think, Goldendale or something, that all we had verbal agreements with, who took a job with me, had plans to move to the Dalles, couldn't find housing, and gave me the resignation. Some of them after a little while of work. It is an issue, and I have been in the hiring market in Hood River for 9 years, and it could get to be a very, very bad issue. And the quality of, if we don't take care of our service industry workers and address the housing problem, I think that that's a much more relevant problem, and it's going to approach us much faster than the parking problem will. And I don't think that the parking is going to be, it's not going to be as noticeable as you or affect businesses as much as you would think, because of the different hours that the residents will have, just from my personal experience. Also, it's so convenient when we're a very large community, and I'm from Dufur, but I've lived here for 3 years as well. It is so convenient, especially when you're out of town, or driving a piece, to be able to pull up on a curve, go in a business and come back out again. But it is brutal when you're a small business owner to have an empty curb and to not have people walking, and to not have the buzz around your business. It's really hard to just, it'd be better to have the opposite problem. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next person.
My name is Shannon Zilka, and my address is 318 East 4th Street, and I own Shannon's Ice Cream. I live above it, so I'm right downtown, close to where this project will be built, hopefully. And I also had to ask for a parking variance, and if I'd been denied it, I think it would have shut my project down. And I'm sure that I affect residents and businesses near me as far as parking goes, but hopefully I have a net positive impact. I bring people off the freeway, I bring people from other communities, and hopefully I'm doing something good for downtown. And I support every business downtown. I would love to see a thriving downtown. And I really love this project. I think it's gonna really bring a lot of activity and life to downtown and to the businesses there. Yes. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All right, yeah, next person, please.
I'm last. My name is John Southgate. I live at 88 South 4th Street in Independence, Oregon, not the Dalles. Full disclosure, I'm a consultant in urban planning and development and downtown revitalization. I am working for Mary, but I wanted to testify really wearing my hat as a perspective of someone in the economic development and downtown revitalization field for the last 40 years. I think this has been a great and important discussion, both sides of the issue. I think it's heartfelt, and I think Josh has probably heard an earful of some ideas of things to pay attention to. The boundary of this special parking district, there's probably some follow-up. I want to say, though, based on my experience working both in the public sector and working for a number of public sector clients around the state of Oregon, from Talent to Madras to Lincoln City, I probably don't need to tell you, this is an incredible project. And every client I've worked with, these municipalities around Oregon, would leap at the opportunity to have a project like this. In the world of economic development, whether it's small business, you heard testimony, or Intel. I worked with Intel when I worked for the city of Hillsborough. Employee attraction and retention is probably the biggest challenge they face. Workforce, getting people to come work for me in the first place or to stay. What drives someone choosing to come to work for Intel or for the local grocery store? It's housing choices and schools. You can't do a whole lot maybe about schools, but providing more housing at any income level will help your economy. Even if these were all pretty pricey, I don't even know what the rents are going to be, but anytime you increase supply, that frees up other units. So someone who might be earning $100,000 for Google right now, who right now is renting a more modest unit, he or she can move into this place when it's open, and that'll free up the unit that is more affordable to someone who can't afford, who isn't making $100,000. I want to say something too about parking. I'd say it's probably the issue that comes up most in urban redevelopment issues. Maybe this is stating the obvious, but there's a difference between suburban locations and urban locations. When I go to downtown Independence, actually we can walk. We're 4 blocks off of Main Street. I'm not just going to one business. I might go to the coffee shop. I might go to the bakery. I might go meet a friend at the hotel, whatever it is. So a parking space functions differently in your downtown than it does on the edge of the city. someone wiser than me once said, no one goes somewhere to park. And it's important to keep that in mind. And with all due respect to people who are concerned about the parking count, it's a legitimate question to be posed, but sometimes it seems like the solution is to tear everything down and pave everything over and make it a parking lot, as the old song goes. And I don't mean to sound sarcastic, but a city depends on density, walkability, transit, and then the judicious use of your parking. You need to have parking. I drove to the hearing tonight, obviously. By the way, I would encourage you, if you haven't been to Independence, they've done an incredible job. I'd love to take credit for it. I had nothing to do with it, but housing and a hotel, the shops are being fixed up because there's more people walking downtown. The woman talked about a tragic situation some years ago. You want more eyes on the street, as one of the other testifiers said. Having more housing, supporting more businesses, a more active downtown. It's a safer place to be. I feel very safe walking down Independence Main Street because there's always people. That's all I want to say. This is a great project, and every city I work with around the state of Oregon would die to have this project. If there is parking challenges once it's built, there are a number of things you could do. Parking strategies are developed. You put in special residence programs. So if you have that challenge, there are a number of solutions you could pursue to address it. But you want the problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
To answer any questions.
Oh, nope. Any questions? No questions. Thank you. Okay, next person, please.
Hello.
Hey.
My name is Tanner Dunbar. I live, 207 Laughlin Street, the Dalles, Oregon. I don't like public speaking, so I'm sorry, but I'm here just to say that I'm in favor with the Basalt Commons. I run a local property management business. We are based actually out of Hood River, but we do serve about 6 counties now throughout the Columbia River Gorge. I understand everyone's concerned about the parking, situations like that, but I'm also in agreement with the last few people that have spoken just about the additional eyes, downtown the Dalles. I'm looking at this kind of as a personal level and a professional level. One, because I know that there is a housing crisis in the Dalles. I also think that the Basalt Commons is going to attract a certain type of person to live there versus kind of what we've seen and what we're used to within the Dalles. Another person just spoke about increase in rents and pricing on the housing and how many people rent nowadays, things like that. And that's very accurate. Another person was speaking about the uses, like the Basalt Commons is mainly going to be studio and 1-bedrooms. Another person commented about why don't you, maybe revitalize your plans, do 2 and 3 bedrooms. I think Mary's response was accurate. I think given a study, I've been doing property management the last 11 years. I've been in real estate my entire life, professionally the last 11 years. I think Mary's response was perfect, very spot on. I think it's great that someone's coming into the community and offering housing for different types of generations. She spoke for elderly. She spoke for, maybe like newlyweds. There's couples, there's individuals. I think someone made a comment that 2 people working a minimum wage job will be able to afford essentially a unit at Basalt Commons, which I think is very good to see. Unlike some of the other investors and other people in our area, she's not buying an apartment complex or buying a pre-built unit, kicking everyone out to remodel them. I'm sure half the people in this room know that there's a lot of investors that come into the Dalles and Hood River due for now. They're doing that exact thing. Kind of touched me when Mary spoke about the elderly, just because I know for a fact right now there's an investor group that came out of Portland, displaced about 25 elderly individuals in some units over on the West 10th Street, which is very unfortunate. Their reasoning, I don't believe, was right. Ideally, or essentially what they did is they remodeled those units, posted them for higher rent. That right there is kind of like a red flag. I do get some of the smaller businesses and their concerns about the parking. Downtown the Dalles has had a lot of businesses leave, unfortunately.
It's not because of the parking. It's not because someone couldn't park in front of their street. Someone had to walk a block to come do it. I think it's strictly just because of the Dalles. There's a lack of reason to go downtown nowadays. It's mainly the same things. It's bars, it's restaurants. Our smaller coffee shops have shut down. Another few little community stores have shut down or moved out of downtown just because of convenience. You know, another thing that kind of gets me is, again, you know, like Downey Furniture, not knocking anyone by chance, but I don't go furniture shopping really anymore. I see something online, I buy it. I'm not trucking down to Downey Furniture and buying a Lazy Boy or anything like that. It's just my generation. That's how I was raised. Unfortunately, that's what it is. Kind of the same thing with Sawyer's. You know, I personally looked at buying a property adjacent to Sawyer's, a multiplex. All of Sawyer's employees were parked at public parking. It was public parking, but parked on street when they have that parking lot that they're so concerned about someone else using. Again, if they're using it, why can't Basalt Commons use it? I understand the increase. There's way more units available at Basalt Commons versus there is employees at Ace Hardware. Totally get that. But again, if they're using it, I think anyone else should have the right to use it. I totally side with it. And I think that most people that are concerned with the parking don't really have the valid reasons to be concerned about it. Most people that work are gone a majority of the day. That's when Sawyer's, I'm sure, gets a majority of their business. That's when Herbal Revival Apothecary gets their business. You know, that's when people are dropping off their cars to dealerships to get repaired on, things like that. I think it's great, the amenities that are going to be offered there. I think a workspace is fantastic because a lot of us now, after COVID, have the opportunity to work from home a majority of the time. We get to sit down on our laptops, maybe drink a cup of coffee. If she's offering that in a lobby as an amenity to a tenant, I think that's I think that's great. I think that's worth it. Again, just wrapping it up, I think that having less available parking is something that could be good for our community, just because foot traffic is what keeps our businesses alive.
All right, thank you. All right, next person, please.
Hi there. My name's Taylor Alsheimer. I live here in the Dalles at 505 West 3rd Place, just outside of downtown. First off, I just want to say I'm in favor of this project because, you know, this is going to be so good for our economic development of the Dalles. I moved here in 2011, around the time a lot of businesses were shutting down, and it was just kind of sad to see. You know, since then we've seen businesses come and go, but I just think this is an opportunity to bring a lot more commerce into town and more people into town and just revitalize our downtown district. And I think this is an amazing opportunity. But the real reason that I support this is housing, you know. Excuse me. I'm a public school teacher. I teach at the Dalles High School. And it's this time of year that I get a bunch of emails from just blank emails, or not blank emails, emails from people I don't know, new teachers trying to find a place to live. And there's just not a lot of availability. You go online and, you know, Facebook or whatever, and you're always seeing people looking for a home. And it's just tragic to see that there's such a lack of housing. So I think these two reasons really take priority over the parking. And that being said, I really do encourage the city to work with those who are the businesses downtown that have a need for the parking spots. I think there's some way we can all come into agreement and make something work. I don't know what that solution is, but I think that's something to be explored more. I just would hate for the Dalles to lose this opportunity. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next person, please. All right, last call for any person that wishes to testify in opposition to the appeal. If not, we will be giving the applicant an opportunity to rebuttal. You want to check again on the script? Oh, excuse me. Does anyone wish to testify or ask questions on this matter, not in favor or opposition, but just ask questions, general thoughts? Thank you. Okay, then. Moving on to the applicant, other opportunity to rebuttal, please. Yes. Okay, you just gotta jump up. Just come on. Yeah. Yeah. And then have a seat and make sure you say your name and address into the microphone.
Deborah Gomez, and mailing address is P.O. Box 1329, the Dalles. I just have a comment regarding the size of the building and the impact that it has visually. Just to include the people who have had homes and own homes along the back, I guess it would be the north side. And what an obtrusive concept this is. I'm in favor of a building. I think that property values possibly could be affected by this of people who pay taxes and have paid taxes and own homes for many years in the area. And I just think that should be considered. They're citizens, they pay taxes, and this building is huge. It's going to obstruct the view of the Dalles, which a lot of property owners, that's how they purchased their property and why some of them purchased it. And it's going to be rather intrusive on that. Now, I'm in favor of a building, not that size. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, last call for anyone who wishes, anyone who wishes to testify or ask questions on this matter, not in favor of opposition. If you care to come up and speak, don't raise your hand, just walk up here. Okay, we are going to the applicant for the rebuttal. And thank you.
Thank you again, and thank you for your indulgence. It's been a long one. So I want to start by going back to a note I made with the preliminary instructions that Chair Cornett read. I've done hundreds, maybe thousands of these hearings, and that's a script we hear a lot. And you started out with something really important. The decision has to be made on the criteria in the code. That's important to remember, because as we explained, when you look at subsection D, it creates a clear, objective path for certain owners to waive the parking requirements. And I've given you my legal interpretation. Mr. Sawyer commented, it's one interpretation. This is one lawyer. I'm just one lawyer, but your staff shares the same interpretation as I do. And if it works the way it's worked for the 30 years I've been doing this, your staff came up with his interpretation based on your city attorney. So that would be two attorneys that share the same interpretation. And I say that because it's a very solid interpretation. That's the way your code is written. And the drafters had a choice to say, we are going to allow certain applicants, certain owners to elect this if they meet certain criteria. And if they don't, then they have to go to the subjective one and they have to do the parking plan and get a reduction. That was a choice, a legislative choice that council made. And I think our interpretation is absolutely correct. I think your staff's interpretation is correct. Now, I want to correct one thing. And Ms. Hanlon is here to confirm the economics of it. But when she bought the lots across the street from the furniture store owner, who obviously didn't need them for parking, because if he did, he would have not sold them. But the plan was to use them for this project. But the city expressed to her that they felt a better use of that was public parking. And so it wasn't a decision that she made to take parking away. It was a decision, a strategic decision by people whose city's best interest is their job. They decided that's a better use. And so that's how that came by. And she didn't make money. It was an economic loss. And she can confirm that. So on some of the other comments, I don't really want to get into the details, except somebody had a comment that was really interesting. I'd never heard of future proofing. And it's a good thought. And it's kind of leads into what I want to really talk about as I close. And that is, if you approve this one, there's going to be some parking on the street, no doubt. What about that years down the road? What do we do? And that's an important thing because there's two concepts here. One is you don't want to stop all development for fear and the economic vitality that you heard about that's going to come from it and all the benefits that are going to come from this project, because you got to fear that in the future there's going to be a bigger problem. I don't think that's the way to do it. The way to do it is the way you heard Mr. Bourguignon talk about what Canby's doing. And you're doing the same thing here. The city here has an advisory committee on downtown parking. And I've read some of the minutes of the meeting, and they have a study that has been done. And that's what the city needs to do, because we're entitled to have this approved based on what's in the code today. That's the other concept. That's what the law, your attorney will tell you that. That's called the goalpost rule. And so how to deal with this future fear and concern. And the concern part, I say fear because sometimes it's not, some of the issues may not be as legitimate as others, but a lot of them are legitimate. Those are concerns. But the way to deal with it is to continue to this planning process and have an advisory committee. Mr. Sawyer's on it and Ms. Hanlon's on it. So you're getting multiple perspectives, and city staff is on it. And they're coming up with strategies to make sure in the future you can do exactly what people here are telling you they want you to do. Create this vitality. We want development. We want to bring people downtown, but we want you as city officials, you and city council, to work together to figure out going forward, how are we going to deal with parking? And that's that committee. And part of it could be amending that zone, that restrictive zone. It's a really good idea that the committee should take up. It doesn't really affect the approvability of our project because we meet the code. But my client will tell you, she supports all of that. She wants to be involved and is involved in looking futuristically, future-proofing the city for parking. And so I think that's really the way to do it. It's not to just say no more development. We have this concern of how it's going to impact us. Cut it off now. It's better to let the city grow and develop smartly and deal with parking in the way you're dealing with it. Put smart people on smart committees and figure out strategies long-term. Like, for example, you don't have any time restrictions. One of the consultants that your city council hired is suggesting you consider maybe 2 to 3 hour limits in certain areas. That turns over parking spots faster, and then your numbers look better, and there's more parking available. And lastly, convenience. I just want to mention convenience. I agree convenience is important. I don't want to diminish it, but I think part of this really is if you're going to grow, create an economically vital downtown, a downtown where people want to go, it's a buzz. Convenience is going to have, your expectations on convenience may have to be adjusted. You may have to park across the street rather right in front of where you want to go, but that's a good thing because that means a lot of people are competing to come down to your downtown to support your businesses and spend their hard-earned money supporting those businesses. I don't think it's a bad thing. And I think convenience can be adjusted a little bit if you're going to want to grow and have this vital community. So that's what I had to say. Ms. Hanlon can bring it home.
I just sort of, tonight's the night to respond to things. And so I'm going to go ahead and do it. And, I typically just do my work. That's what I like to do. And I'm passionate about housing, and I'm passionate about communities and healthy places for people to live and vital areas. And I've run small businesses, and I've supported a number of other businesses in getting started. And it's really, Todd brought up the emotions, and I think Todd we got to get him to be the next mayor when mayor is done, because he, is able to kind of talk to both sides. But I have a really hard time responding to the very aggressive, hostile response to just basic information. And if people could benefit by having information, then make it an environment where we're really sharing information. This sort of tolerance of aggressive behavior and is bizarre. I just don't, it's not a civilized society at that point. And, I think it's very strange that people went to Canby. I'm happy to talk to anyone to Canby. They've never called me. I'm across the street from them. I've supported all their businesses. I've respected them. And when, one of the questions was, would you fight it if you were Downey Furniture? You're sort of like, no, actually, I wouldn't. If 116 new residents were going to be filling apartments across the street from me, no, I don't think I would. So we have different business strategies. I went across the street and asked him, if he wanted to work together about, so that we could figure out model units and use them. And he started yelling at me about Taco Tuesday. And I'm sorry, but that is not how you plan growth. And as with regard to development, it's very expensive. It's very complex. It's a million moving pieces, which is why it's not done often. And you have one new construction building downtown. I live here. And it's a very difficult process. And the only way you can go about it is by knowing what the codes are. And you know what the codes and the zoning are, and you follow those rules. And we have followed all the rules. And it is not about committee or Monday morning quarterback. It is about following the rules that are established so we know what is needed and wanted downtown. And that's how you get there. And, I am totally committed to my entire life to housing. And so, I just want to emphasize that the Dalles needs housing, and the Dalles does not have a parking problem downtown right now. And we had followed all the rules and regulations, and we would like to proceed with this. I've been working on it since 2017. And I think if you have any questions, I will just happy to answer.
Two questions. Number one is this is a clarification question from way previous in the meeting. And I guess a little bit of follow up on one of my original ones. When we're talking about affordability of the apartments, how you determine that affordability and where are you getting that number?
So there are two different numbers, and Dan criticized the numbers in Canby, and I can explain if anybody wants to sit down. This is very complex. These are not 20-second answers, so I'm happy to sit down with anyone who wants to understand housing in a little bit more deeply. So the market rate numbers that we're getting, we're basing on a market study that we did that shows what the need is, where the demand is, and it is based on where we are in Canby, what is considered market rate now in Canby. And so because you're adjusting to that, and we've got to get it financed, whether we get an appraiser to approve a project in the Dalles is still left to be seen. So the 80% of median family income? Somebody help me out here. Yeah. So that is not based on anything we're deciding. That's based on the federal government's numbers for the Dalles. And let me tell you, they're substantially lower than any other county or city or town anywhere near here. So it's 80% of the median there. And, when I do this work, I do it in a very integrated way. And so I studied the other communities like Hermiston, communities that also asked us to do these projects. And the Dalles is way behind economically than any of our neighboring towns. So that number is based on where the Dalles is now, and it's 20% of the units will be at 80% of median.
Okay. So just to recap concisely, the numbers that you're determining what those rents are and whether above or below median income is specifically the Dalles.
For the 80%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second question. In a perfect world, which construction is not, what is your timeline? How long will this build take from breaking ground to the first tenant moving in?
When we break ground, it'd be probably, we're guessing 18 months. And Nick is here. Is that a safe number?
Okay. In a perfect world.
In a perfect world. Yeah. And let's hope it is.
Okay. That's the only question I had. Those are the only two questions I had. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Okay, no questions from the Zoomers. Do the commissioners feel they have enough information to make a decision? If you don't, we can ask specific questions of the applicant again, the appellant, staff. I don't think the appellant's here anymore. Okay. All right. Is the commission ready for deliberations?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So that being said, the public testimony portion of the hearing is now closed. Hit that. And we'll proceed with commission deliberations. And anyone with any thoughts can just get into it. Yeah, go ahead.
Is this on? Yeah. So clearly there's a ton of emotion behind this parking issue, and I have a lot of empathy for that. I think typically when emotions run high like that, what's behind it is fear. I haven't gotten quite clear on what that fear is about. But I do have a lot of empathy for it. Now, if I look at issues we're facing in the Dalles, I think everybody would probably agree that housing is a huge issue we have in developing our beautiful town. We know many businesses are having a really hard time bringing people here. We heard that from Farm Stand. I know it's true for the school district, and I know it's true for the hospital, etc. And we have an issue, and I think there's probably common agreement about that too, in revitalizing downtown. We still have plenty of closed storefronts, and several people have mentioned that on many, many days, and even on weekend days, after 6, 7 o'clock, it's like ghost town down here. Compared to those issues, a parking issue and walking 2 or maybe even 3 blocks to do my shopping seems a much lesser issue. I'm absolutely convinced that this project will help revitalize downtown and will significantly impact and improve our housing problem. So if I look at those 3 aspects, big issues for our town, I find myself. There is one more thing. I do trust that the work that staff has done, the research that has been done, is done in good intent and with an objective mind to what the results will be. I don't feel distrust to that. So that's the other aspect that makes me clearly feel that the original decision of the waiver was the right one. Thank you.
Any thoughts or questions from you guys?
Well, I think in a residential building, you have really just slightly different needs for parking. I think they do have to have some dedicated parking within a reasonable distance anyway. I just don't think this project has, met that. If they could make some arrangement with the city or some other, or a private entity that has parking for leasing additional spaces, that would be fine. I'd like to see this built in some form, but I think they need to work on the parking issue first.
Thoughts?
I'm good.
Commissioner Portella or Commissioner Pena, any thoughts or anything? No, okay. I'll speak. So I guess I'll tell you a story. So I moved to the Dalles in 2012. Excuse me, 2016, moved to the Gorge in 2012. And moved to the Dalles. And at that time, this is when housing was a completely different price throughout the Gorge. We could have, I think, lived wherever we wanted. Hood River, White Salmon, in the Dalles. And my wife Maggie and I chose it here because we liked the vibe. We're in the service industry at the time, so we're kind of getting freight trained behind the bar, and it was really nice to come to the Dalles because it was just such a relaxed atmosphere in comparison to Hood River where we're working. And it was really nice to just check out. There was another aspect of us moving to the Dalles that played a really, really key role, and that is I saw the Dalles very much like my hometown, Valparaiso, Indiana, when I was growing up. When I was growing up, Valpo was definitely, it looked a lot like the Dalles. A lot of empty storefronts, a lot of people trying to make their businesses work, a lot of older businesses that have been there for generations. A good mix of what was going on, but you could tell there was that gap. It just wasn't firing on all cylinders, and it was just not like getting there. Over time, Valparaiso put a large residential building downtown, put a park downtown. Over time, even since I moved away, that town became more and more busy. And it's because of the involvement that it's because the people there got involved and made their city better. And what we have here is people getting involved and making their city better. The reason that I moved to the Dalles as opposed to a city that is more established like Hood River or White Salmon or something like that is because I knew that I can move here and make the difference. My money spent at whatever restaurant or establishment or store downtown, I'm making the difference to make this place better because this is where my money is going. And that's important. And knew that I could make an impact here. Not that I'm important, not that I'm a somebody, but every dollar counts. So I moved here. And then one day Rich Mays asked if I wanted to be on the planning commission. I said, yes. I didn't ask for this. He called me. I'm like, why are you calling me? It doesn't matter. So here I am. I'm involved. I'm trying to make the town better. And, who's to say that my decisions are always making things better? But the important part is I am involved. These people are involved. All you in the audience, people that, make the applications, people that support or post public comment, the people that even appeal are involved. So we are all part of this process. And that's important. The key word there, along with so many that I've already stated, is process. We are moving towards something. And we don't know what that is, but it is the future. We have to adapt and we have to be agile as we move through this process. I think back to the RV parks that were in residential zones and, something that had been in the code for a long time. And we said, yep, we need to approve these because that's what the code says. We get feedback from the community that like, hey, we don't like RV parks and residential zones. We need to change that. But the code already allows it. We approve it. We make changes later. And now those RV parks aren't allowed in those residential zones. What we have here tonight is a project that the code allows. We are realizing that there may need to be some changes that need to happen later to help kind of make the community better after this project happens. But we can't stop progress because of a few small things that people don't, like, or the things that aren't perfect. We have to be able to adapt and we have to be able to change and, be agile in all those decisions so we can keep moving forward. So I personally think that, denying this appeal, allowing this project to move forward, at least to the next step beyond tonight's meeting, is important. But I also think that it's important to continue to be involved community members showing up to these meetings, saying, hey, we need to address this parking issue before it gets worse. We have, I'm just going to say 2 years to figure out a better parking situation. I think that we all have the power to do that.
Great.
Yeah. So, is the commission ready for a motion? Okay, you can make one at any time.
So I would motion to deny the appeal.
I second that motion. Sorry, are we not doing this
Chair
right?
Cornett?
Yes.
I'd like to, if there's a willingness from the commission to make a motion tonight, there is some proposed motion language. I believe it's.
Tell me what page.
I believe it's on the script in front of you, on the very last part that you.
Page.
It's bolded and underlined, and I think also italicized.
Sorry, I really have to go to the bathroom, and I was gonna take a short recess to do that, and I just powered
It's on
through.
page 53.
I got it. Thank you.
Cody's blacking out.
And so, with that said, Commissioner Portella,
Yeah, why are you telling me?
it's the commissioner's motion. If you'd like to withdraw that and make a motion from the recommendations that staff proposed, this is Oregon land use is very particular about some of the words that are used. And so there are some staff recommendations listed for both granting and denying the appeal in the agenda packet.
Yes, I am looking at it right now. I got so many findings. You said it was 53.
It's on the screen.
Oh, just kidding. So I would move to adopt resolution number PC 623A-24, a resolution denying the appeal and affirming the director's approval of site plan review number 544-24 based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law set forth in the agenda staff report with all conditions of approval outlined below.
I second that. Excuse me. All in favor of moving, excuse me, all in favor of moving to adopt resolution PC 623A-24, a resolution denying the appeal and affirming the director's approval of site plan review number 544-24 based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law set forth in the agenda staff report with all conditions of approval outlined below. Raise your right hand, say aye.
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 Aye. That is 1, 2, 3, 5 ayes. All those not in favor say nay.
Yay.
That is 1 nay and no abstains.
Paula, is Commissioner Grant still on the call? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And just to, thank you. Be involved, show up, stick around. These are the things that matter. Like we're doing this, not this application, like we are doing the process. So good for us and good for you. Okay, next is number 8, resolution PC 623A-24, denial of APL 037-24 Bob Wickwire. And that is, excuse me.
It is on page 263 of the packet.
Yep. Resolution number PC 623A-24, denial of appeal application 037-24 Bob Wickwire, and affirming the community developer director's approval of site plan review 544-24, requesting approval to construct 116 for-rent apartments over plus or minus 9,500 square feet of retail space, resident amenities and building services in a plus or minus 96,000 gross square foot, 5-story mixed-use building. Property is located at 523 East 3rd Street in the Dalles, Oregon, as depicted in Assessor's Map number 1N 13E BD as tax lots 6,700, 6,800, and 6,900. Property is zoned CBC, Central Business Commercial. All those in, may I please have a motion to adopt this resolution?
Is Chris still on the call?
Yep.
Chris, can you hear me?
You're muted.
Yes. So the motion was made at the conclusion of the public hearing to, I believe it was, what page was that again, Josh?
253.
53.
Page 53? Yes. The motion was to adopt resolution number PC 623A.
Right. The resolution's already been adopted.
That's my understanding as well. So
Right.
no further votes needed?
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
The resolution encapsulates the planning commission's decision.
right. And it's the final decision of the planning commission.
Okay, so we don't need to do the Section 8 resolution thing.
Correct.
I don't believe so. We just had to list it there in the agenda packet.
Okay, got it. Moving on from that item then. Staff comments, project updates.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for your patience getting through this one. I just want to announce we coming up on our September, it doesn't look like we're going to have any meetings planned. We'll see if that changes, if any other applications come through in that period of time. October 3rd will be our third housing production strategy meeting. That's a joint session with City Council and Planning Commission. And then keep you posted. October 17th, the second meeting of the month, it will be canceled. There's a planning conference that I'll be attending, so that one will be canceled. Some other things to keep in mind, coming up August 26th, we'll have a flyer going out for this, the Housing Production Strategy Open House. So this is going to be something culminating on the work that we've already done. This is going to be something open to the public. It will be held virtually. The consultants will be virtual, but we're going to open up council chambers to make sure everybody has an opportunity to look at the data that we have, to look at the information that we have. There's also going to be a story map, a GIS story map put together for it that kind of explains what the process is, as well as a survey that we're going to put out with that to find out the housing need of the area. So once that information is available, please share it as many places as you possibly can. Let's try to get the word out for that survey. We'd really like to hear. Some other things that came up, that we may see, we may bring in front of the commission here in the next couple months. FEMA has some new updates to PICMs. They're PICMs. I'm forgetting, it's an acronym. I'm forgetting what it is, but basically there are some immediate policy changes and potential code changes that the city has to make by the end of this year. I'll go over that more with you at a later date. I was apprised of the information about a week ago, had my first seminar on it just 2 days ago. So it's a lot to take in. Not only do we have the map adoption that's going to be occurring within the next 6 months, they're revising it once again, but also there are some other potential code changes that could be coming very quickly in front of you. So I talked about those meetings being canceled, but we'll see what we can do, whether it's just a policy change at this point or an overall code amendment. But definitely the communities that were on the call, definitely all of them expressed concern with the quick turnaround that FEMA's expecting of this. There is a ballot measure 56 that you may be familiar with, and that's a notice to all impacted property owners of a land use of a zoning change. That requires an extensive period of time to bring in comments. So I'll keep you posted as it goes on, but this is all kind of a surprise to a lot of the smaller communities of these changes. And what it effectively is, it's making sure that not only is development complying with floodplain standards, but also making sure that the development is not impacting any endangered species in the water. So that's what it really comes down from, a lawsuit. FEMA was actually sued. And it's now, these changes are now impacting all the communities, many communities in Oregon. So more to come on that. And the last little plug I have, we're still recruiting for a senior planner. So if you have any interested bodies, have them take a look at our job posting. We'd really like to get that filled, and so we can provide more and more planning commission meetings for you in the future. With all that, I hope you have a wonderful evening.
I have one more thing to add. I'm gonna need to step back from the commission at the end of September.
Okay.
Need to resign my position.
So this might be your bon voyage.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
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 Well, we really
Wonderful
appreciate
voyage.
all your service past few years. It's been wonderful working with you. And you know, if you're still available through any of that housing production strategy stuff, we'd be happy to have you.
Mm.
Are you moving out of the area?
Well, I'm this winter I'm gonna spend longer time than normally in Sweden.
Oh, okay.
And it's getting long enough that I feel like it's not quite fair to the position here. Last winter I was gone for 3 months, and I kind of swung it by just doing the Zoom meetings. But if I am able to stay longer time this year, then I don't.
Have family back there?
All my family's back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm from there.
Okay.
Hey, Commissioner Mosher, did you say end of September?
Correct.
I think that the city clerk will need a formal letter from you.
Okay. Is it any kind of format I should?
Philip.
No, just yeah.
I'll send you an email.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. Let's make a note to get in front of the parking thing. Let's send something to city council, and just figure out how we can make that. But let's just start brainstorming it, because something needs to happen. And let's just get in front of it.
Yeah, so there is a downtown parking study that's currently happening. We've had 3 meetings so far. The next meeting, what's actually going to be toward the end of this month, we're going to be discussing a draft list of strategies. One of the strategies may be the recommendation for 3-hour timed parking downtown. These are all things that would need to be adopted later on, potential code changes, but these are currently just recommendations. And one of those very well may be the expansion of that downtown parking restricted zone. So I think it's an opportune time right now that we have.
Yep.
But yes, I will make note of that.
Apologies for my personal story that rambled on and went off the rails. So, yeah, I meant to make that a little more concise. But
No, I do appreciate you speaking about that, because I think that illustrates a lot of, personal and yeah. So I appreciate you talking.
yeah, I realize in hindsight I missed 2 of the main points I was trying to make, but it's fine. Fine. We can catch up with that later.
That's okay.
It was still entertaining.
It was a good point. I liked it.
All right.
Okay. Thank you all. Adjourned. Yes.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.